and prepare remarks here very shortly. Mr. Mayor, as the city clerk has mentioned, the members of the Joint Committee for Finance and Governance and Planning and Zoning and Economic Development Committee have reviewed this ordinance and heard hours of presentation. They've heard hours of presentation along with debates regarding charter allows for the ordinance sponsor to call an item out of committee. It states that the item shall be docketed for second readings on the agenda, and then the next regular scheduled council legislative session we will discuss. Following, such items were scheduled for final readings and shall be debated today here as part of the final readings and docket, which leads us to why we're here today. We're now 42 days since this item was referred to the Joint Committee on May 26th. Therefore, on June 16th, Mr. Mayor and members of the council, I exercise my privilege as the ordinance sponsor and request that this ordinance be moved from the Joint Committee and placed before the full council for consideration today. One of the issues, as I rewatched the video, one of the issues that arose during that Joint Committee meeting was the residents of Parade Park homes. They wanted Parade Park to be included in the plan. I want to be extremely clear. While we, as 3rd District representatives, are concerned about the issues that are occurring in Parade Park, we have to address those items in a different setting. Parade Park is a privately owned housing co-op. Proposed bond for funding of capital improvement dollars cannot be used on private property. Thus, there are several properties in the district that are not included in 18th Divine's proposal that the manager has presented to us. And these items, I repeat, must be kept separate. 18th Divine certainly is a premier destination location. Thus, it puts Kansas City on the map internationally. This place it represents rich history of our city as a whole. This is not just an asset, as I mentioned in business session, to the 3rd District, but a citywide asset for tourism, a destination location, and the birthplace of jazz. We previously discussed the history about the area and how 18th Divine became the downtown activity for African American community and the nexus for the current momentum that has been created through existing investments surrounding 18th Divine and such that not are limited to the Crossroads District that is on the western boundary, but also the Urban Youth Academy on the northern boundary, which has been led by Mayor James. We've discussed some of the iconic figures that we know that it's engraved in our rich history here in Kansas City, but throughout this entire world. Like the late great Buck O'Neill, Jackie Robinson, Satchel Paige, Mary Lou Williams, Count Basie, Charlie Parker, Ella Fitzgerald, and many, many more. All of them matriculated through 18th Divine, crafting their skills at a very important intersection, creating a central for commercial and entertainment activities for an area that we now know and people know all over the world. This preservation of innovative style of jazz, baseball, and food. To some, 18th Divine is an area that's considered underserved. Internationally, it's recognized as one of the city's most deserved assets to be celebrated, very similar to Beale Street in Memphis, Tennessee, or Lennox Avenue in Washington, New York City, Both of these areas serve as examples for cultural heritage tourism. These areas accommodate cultural activity spaces that are both tourism, bringing visitors to the area, and a destination location for local residents. Investing in 18th Divine poses a natural progression that would stimulate economic development, the need for revitalization, and continued momentum. We applaud all of those who come before us, who worked extremely hard and laid the groundwork for the district to realize 1990, we were able to embrace the assets. We must preserve the historic buildings that have been left neglected for many years. And today, in 2006, some 26 years later, it's now incumbent upon all of us that we as a city maintain these assets. This project presents us unique problems, unique challenges, but it's also important that this venue exists in our city. We've come to the conclusion that we certainly have to support it. After the direction of this city council to our manager and our city staff, they submitted a financing plan for various improvements to 18th and Vine. They reported back to the full council within 60 days. Now we are at 182 days since accepting those recommendations from the manager, the city staff, and worked diligently to provide us with the path forward. And I applaud Mr. Manager and the city staff for their work. We all understand that urban core revitalization does not occur overnight. It's a gradual process that takes time to accomplish when everything goes as planned. Only one needs to keep in mind that it has took years for this investment, coupled with inadequate decisions to create the current conditions that we now have an opportunity to rectify. Our recommendations that the manager has submitted to us are based on bond funding being utilized strategically in other ways for infrastructure, for stability, costs that will allow for us to create the foundation that will incent private market to flow. The concept is not unique. We can look toward the immediate south at Beacon Hill, where for decades ago the city invested nearly $10 million to create a market-rate residential development project east of Truce, with the average cost investment between $300,000 to $400,000. At the time, the general consensus was that this project would not be successful. However, you can look at the last home which was sold in that area for over $450,000, and the private market certainly has flowed with more development that is coming along east of Truce. We have to continue to explore the different offerings for 18th and Vine with an eye toward funding the right combination of retail, commercial, experience, and attractions for more visitors. We also have to look for ways to strengthen the district's weaker blocks, identifying growth opportunities and better connectivity for the area south of Vine and also west to the crossroads. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, we urge your consideration as we deliberate on the merits of this very important premier destination location. And because of the positive discussion that we had in our business session today, in the real push to make sure that we see something happen in 18th and Vine, Mr. Mayor, I request that we hold this document for 1 week for further negotiation to work out financing for this. According to our city charter, that does not require a vote. It just requires a motion from the sponsor, which I've just made. Thank you so much.
Second.
It doesn't require a vote, so there's no second needed. The ordinance will be held 1 week.
160472.
Before we get there, I do want to ask, as a matter of procedure, you have a motion to amend the ordinance. Does the ordinance need to be amended to be held? No?
No, sir. It does not, according to the charter. However, I'm glad you pointed that out because I do want to go over some of this, even though we won't necessarily discuss them now. But I know that there's been a lot of angst and questions about this, so if it's important, I would ask that you all indulge me for a few seconds to make sure that you hear these items and that we can have further discussion as I work with Councilwoman Shields, who has some concerns about the financing, Councilman Wagner, who has suggested some concerns, and a number of our colleagues. And I think the comments that you made, Mr. Mayor, about making sure that we send the right signal to this entire city about how we can send Kumbaya. That was what your word, never mind. But I want to get to Kumbaya. And I think it's important to send the right message to this entire city that this council is supportive. And that the way that we work toward making this happen, we get there. And so the items that part of this agenda, part of this committee ordinance for the substitute that I have as amended that's in front of you, that we'll discuss potentially in work session next week, and then also in business session next week, and possibly for a vote next Thursday. It will provide 1/3 of the bond payments that will be paid through using 3rd District and District PIAC allocations. It would also authorize the city manager to pursue the creation of a CID that will impose a 1% sales tax that will be used to make the bonds payments. Then also would direct the city manager to include the funding for phases 2, 3, and whether a part of the future bond assurances will be part of the city budget. And so those are the items that we have on the table. I look forward to discussing those items a little bit more in depth and making sure that we come together with a financing plan that can work for all of us on this council so that we send a message to our community and to the city at large that 18th Bond is a destination that certainly has its root back and it's something that we all appreciate and not an underserved area in this city.
Thank you, Councilman Reed. I applaud you for reading the tea leaves and voting this full week. I would also ask our council if at Tuesday's work session, if that work session could involve some vigorous discussion of this so we don't get to Thursday and have to kind of start all over. Unfortunately, I'll be in D.C. I've got to attend to deal with the Secretary of Transportation, but I think it would be a good idea to have this discussion on Tuesday and wrap it up on Thursday so that when it comes up to the vote on Thursday, it's not something that has just been freshly argued an hour before, if possible. But perhaps with some conversation between now and Tuesday, matters can be resolved, but at least that's my hope. So, with nothing further, next ordinance.
Yes, sir. 0472.